Hello, YouTube. Welcome to my channel, Marriage, Politics, and Sports. Hey, listen, we're here to talk about the shutdown. First, let me start out by saying that, now I'm more conservative than I ever was. But just on the surface of it, nobody is blameless in this shutdown, okay? So that's to make it sound like I'm a equivocate here. However, the number one party that's in charge of the shutdown is the Democrats. If I just go by the numbers, every Republican has voted to keep the government open. The House passed a clean CR, and in the Senate, which passed the same kind of CR with the same information 13 times in a row, has decided to hold the government hostage by, you know, weaponizing the vulnerability of the people who voted for a change. This is akin to, let's say, a woman who's using their children as a hostage against a husband or a baby daddy that has moved on. The government has moved on in the conservative era to the right side of history, and there's just a whole bunch of knuckle draggers who want to keep it down. So let's kind of talk about a little bit of it because, again, like I said, nobody's completely blameless. But on this one, there's no need to have a shutdown. Okay. So I started to look into some dates. Okay. By November 1st, if they don't have a resolution to I guess, to the subsidies to the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, the insurance companies are going to start to send out letters to those who are impacted that in 2026, they're going to have increases. And they say some of those increases might be as much as 75% more than they are right now. Okay. So the Democrats want to hold a government hostage to make these guys negotiate by closing the government down, as opposed to just negotiating at the table, because they know they're not going to get what they want unless they have the leverage of damaging a whole bunch of Americans. Okay. Now, I can dig the strategy, but it's going to backfire. And it's already backfiring, even though we're going to show some numbers that say they blame the Republicans more than they blame anybody else. So I'm going to show that just to be kind of fair. Then I can say, hey, listen, these polls are made by people who hate Trump anyway. And that might be iffy biffy, but I know the Washington Post does, and we know the New York Times does. The other polls, maybe not so much. So we'll see that. So again, there's no reason to hold the government closed because the only reason they're holding the government closed is because they want to use the American people as human shields to have leverage over what they want to do. And that's one of the problems that we have. Um, the reason why I said it's both of their faults is because there's no scenario that the government should shut down for either party. You know what I'm saying? I don't think the government should shut down for either party. You got to negotiate because the only reason why we put y'all in Washington is to keep the government running. It's to keep the government running. If you're not doing that, then what are you doing? Now, here's the thing that makes both parties bad. It's because they're all still getting paid. Their health insurances keep going. Their paychecks keep coming. All of those kind of things. So it's just wrong across the board. But I agree with the Republicans not to fold under this kind of pressure and then let this play out where it may. That's what I think. All right. So let's go ahead and look at this little short clip about, what people are saying. I'll let the news play. Now, the news media that I'm going to show is CNN. So we know where CNN stands when it comes to the president and all that kind of stuff. But let's just go there. I'm not going to show a lot of different places. And then I'll show something else too along the way. So let's switch to this. Switch to CNN and see what they got to say.
I want to bring in Arlette Saenz to join us. Arlette, what are the facts here and what are Democrats saying to this?
Well, really right now, what we are hearing from both Speaker Mike Johnson and Democratic leadership is them engaging in this messaging war over who is to blame for this current shutdown. What Republicans are arguing is that they believe that any negotiations about extending those expiring Obamacare subsidies, which is really central to Democrats' arguments and demands, that those discussions can't happen until the government is reopened. And as Speaker Johnson pointed out, they believe that this is an issue that can be handled a little bit later down the road. Those subsidies are set to expire on December 31st at the end of the year. So what Republicans like Speaker Johnson are arguing is Democrats need to reopen the government and allow the work to continue to negotiate for actual negotiations to begin about how to extend or possibly reform those enhanced Obamacare subsidies. But Democrats, meanwhile, are arguing that those conversations need to happen right now. And that is because Americans this very month will start to receive notice of how much their health care premiums are going to increase if those Obamacare.
So that's why I want to stop it right here. I wanted to say that the deadline for those letters to go out for the increase is November 1st, right? The argument that the government has to be closed to force the Republicans to negotiate is a lie. What the Democrats want to do is force the government to disenfranchise all the people who voted Trump into office and change what's in the big, beautiful bill to what they wanted to say. Now, at the heart of all of this is that once the government, the federal government, sends money to the states, especially the blue ones, they play a shell game with the money, and it actually does go to not only taking care of the people who need it, American citizens, it also subsidizes and pay for illegal aliens. That's true. There's no way they could try to lie about it and try to front. That money goes to pay illegal aliens. And the reason why that's a problem is because our taxpayer dollars shouldn't pay for any of those things. But the underlying issue really is that nobody wants to talk about is that the flood of illegal aliens in America costs us money no matter what. You know, I don't know about you and any other Republican, Democrat, liberal. I can't see how people can't wrap their head around the fact that millions of illegal people in this country is going to cost us money. It's going to cost us, and this bullshit that they're working and all that other horseshit, they don't repay. Even full-fledged Americans are not paying enough in Social Security to take care of Social Security now, right? So these people coming in at minimum wage and at slave wages, you think their money is contributing any substantial stuff to, even if they're on the books? A lot of them are off the books. So the point really is, no matter what, just being here in America, we have to spend money on them. You know why? Because if we got 10 million, let's just say 10 million illegal aliens over the last 4 years, 5 years came into this country. Some people say 20, so let's cut that in half. 10 million. Guess what? They're all going to get sick at some point. They're going to all need medical care. They're going to all need all of that kind of shit, right? And we're going to have to foot that bill because they don't have no money. That's why we have to minimize illegal people in this country. We can't pay free health care for people here illegally. It's just common sense. I don't give a shit about your heartstrings and all that other kind of stuff. We can't afford. It seems like we can't even afford American citizens, much less 10 million foreigners, you know, who were most likely, some of them were the dregs of society where they were before. You know, so, I mean, so if there's no way that the Democrats are on the right side of this, you know, so we can't afford to pay for these guys. We got to get them out of the country. And yeah, do we need some immigration reform or somehow open the pipeline so more people could come in legally? Probably, maybe. But, you know, the real issue with legal immigration is also assimilation. We don't want to turn our country into a third world country. So anyway, so let's go ahead and continue.
subsidies are not extended. So they want to make sure that Americans are able to factor in what their health care will look like. Democrats want to see those extended permanently. Republicans, some have said that they want to see an extension. Some want some reforms to the program. But that's really at the heart of the debate right now, as both sides remain locked in with no negotiations in sight for how to end this shutdown.
All right, LXXII, thank you so much. I want to bring in our CNN chief data analyst, Harry Inton, to look at the polling and this blame game. I mean, you're hearing these messaging wars, right, Harry? Walk us through what the numbers are saying about who Americans are blaming right now.
Yeah, I just saw the speaker up there trying to place the blame on Democrats, but I got to be honest with you, you look at the polling data and they simply put not buying Speaker Johnson's arguments. What are we talking about? Well, why don't we just blame more for the 2025 shutdown? Normally, when you see Republican on the screen, that's a good thing because they're leading. But in this case, it's a bad thing because more Americans are blaming him for the shutdown. And you can see it's a sweep across the board. You look at the New York Times poll, blame Republicans more by 7 points. How about the CBS poll, came out yesterday, blame Republicans more by 9 points. How about the Marist University poll, blame Republicans more by 12 points. And then the Washington Post poll takes the cake, blaming Republicans more by 17 points. You average it all together, and we're talking about a double-digit margin in which more Americans are blaming the Republicans than the Democrats. Now, perhaps that shouldn't be so surprising to students of history. Why? Because we've had a number of shutdowns in the past. And which party almost always, or basically always, seems to get blamed? It's the Republican Party that always seems to get blamed, whether it's the 95-96 shutdowns, 2013, or the 2018-2019 shutdowns. And more importantly, what I think is so important is we are still at the beginning of this shutdown, right? What happens right now in the polling may not necessarily hold going forward. But historically speaking, what we've actually seen is that the party that gets blamed at the start of the shutdowns, 95, 96, 2013, 2018, 2019, is the same party that gets blamed by the end of the shutdown. So at this point, more Americans are blaming the Republicans than the Democrats. And historically speaking, those margins have tended to hold.
All right, so before she goes, I'd like to say that I worked for the government through all of these shutdowns, and they suck, right? You know, because where I was, I don't want to say we were protected, but I guess we were, because I worked for the Department of Defense, engineering. You know, we were kind of the last people out. In my facility, I don't think any of these shutdowns meant any of us got let go. Anybody. You know, our facility was 4,000 strong. And I can't remember anybody getting fired because of a shutdown. Now, even though I still know some people where I work at, and even in this one today, in the 2025, you know, a couple of my guys out there still working. Their numbers are still active and they're still getting paid. So that's kind of the deep, dark secret. And nobody from the facility is actually getting fired. And not a reduction in force either. So, you know, all sides of the government is not created equal, like some people don't know. So I just want to throw that in there.
That's interesting. So how many Americans dislike both sides here? You show the Republican side that right now Americans are blaming Republicans, but overall, what about both sides?
Yeah, okay. So, you know, we're talking, you know, we saw the margins, you know, right here where more folks are blaming Republicans than Democrats. But of course, what about people who don't like either side, right? What about this? So blame more for the shutdown. Look, you got Republicans at 39%, Democrats at 27%, but both sides equally, we're talking about a third of the American people, basically 30% on the average poll, who are blaming both sides equally. So this is not a case in which the American public is loving the arguments that Democrats are putting forward. It's more that they hate the Republicans more. And if given the choice, what we're really talking about is a majority of or a large portion of the American public who don't like really either side in this situation. So the American people, I think, kind of just feel like losers in this situation.
All right, so therein lies the truth, right? 2026 is that 30% is going to determine 2026. Besides the gerrymandering that's getting ready to go on, the Supreme Court case that's coming up, the fate of the country is really in that 30%, because whoever's a Democrat and a liberal and whoever's a Republican, you know, not whether you're a Trump supporter or not, those people are pretty much already counted in who's going to vote. Nobody's really changing their minds. That's why we got a stupid shutdown. It's that 30% right there that's going to decide whether we're going to fall on the right side of history or we're going to go backwards into debauchery, like under the Biden administration. And that's a whole nother conversation. But one of the things that I wanted to say here, because this is pretty much all we need on this, is that the Republicans are telling the truth that the money that they give to the blue states, a good portion of that is going to be in a shell game to pay for illegal aliens, because they lose control of the money once they allocate it to the states. So they know that no matter what the Democrats say, that it's going to go for health care for illegal aliens. Everybody knows it. They know it. There's no way around it. It's just true. Because those illegals who gathered in the blue states, they got to go to the hospital. They're going to get sick. A lot of them don't have no jobs. So guess who's paying for that shit? And so the Republicans don't want to do that anymore. All right, so the negotiation on the continuing resolutions for the ACA have to be negotiated where there's some safeguards to make sure the money doesn't go to somebody who should not be in the country. And let me tell you why this is important. And this is not with this case. I'm going to switch to another video with that crazy ass from Minnesota who says that everybody can get a driver's license. And the fact that illegals and anybody can get a driver's license is an absolute conduit for illegal aliens voting both locally and nationally in our elections, which is expressly against the law. So let's go ahead and look at that video for a second. Hold on for a second. Let me go ahead and switch to that, and we'll talk about it. If I can find it. All right. This is where it's at. Okay. Can I find it? I have it somewhere, baby. There it is. All right. This is just a little small clip of her talking about what's going on in Minnesota.
Minnesota's own director of elections just admitted on the record that illegal immigrants are participating in our elections. You have to see the reaction from the Oversight Committee. I mean, it is pure shock. The representative questioning him, she looks like she knew what was happening, but could not believe a Democrat actually just said it out loud. And just to set it up for you, the reason this was even possible in the first place is because Governor Tim Walz signed a bill back in 2023 that basically turned driver's license into a free-for-all, open season for anyone, legal or not. And once an illegal immigrant has that license, the door to the ballot box just swings wide open. Here's Minnesota's director of elections making the bombshell admission just yesterday.
We give driver's licenses to anyone here. You don't have to be a citizen. You don't have to, which is a photo ID. So if someone comes in, they register, they have the driver's license, but they have an incorrect social or no social or whatever. So then they become incomplete. But if they walk in to vote with their driver's license, does that make them all of a sudden now okay?
Mr. Linnell.
Madam Chair, so the designation on the roster for someone whose registration had been incomplete, if they present the election judge with that acceptable identification document, that would clear the challenge from the roster and they would be permitted to cast a ballot.
Do you feel vindicated? I mean, just like that?
There you go, right there. So this was a while ago. So they actually voted, illegal aliens actually voted in the 2024 election. And that's why the plan for the Democrats to flood our country with illegal aliens and get them to the status where they go in front of the polls with no ID to be able to vote so they can maintain power. Because let's face it, the black vote is no longer potent enough to carry the Democrats. And thank God it's not. Even with 92% black women voting for them, and 78% black men. I did the numbers. Even if 100% of eligible black people voted for the Democrats, Trump would have still won, and he would have only lost one state. You know what I'm saying? So we got to clear this up, because as an American citizen, I don't care, whether I don't get into the blackety black thing, right? I'm an American, and whatever American has left to offer, I want it to be there for the rest of my life and my children's life, so we can earn our way through, and take advantage of this great country, as long as it's still great. And if we keep letting people in who don't give a shit about this country, who are sucking our resources dry, we're going to be in big, big trouble. I'm doing a show on Monday on the Black Man Unfiltered network, and the title is, "What if the Democrats get power back in all houses of government? What would America look like if these people, these liberal Democrats, get the country back? What would the place look like? And we already have enough evidence from the Biden administration what it would look like if they had unfettered power to do what they want to do. And any real full-blooded American who has any national pride whatsoever knows that in 4 years in a year you could destroy all of that. All our children will be corrupted. Parents won't have any more. Just going on and on. That's not the reason why I'm here. The Democrats have shut down the government to hold it hostage by hurting American people. They, as much as said that already, they're on the record, because the negotiations that they can do have nothing to do with the government being shut down. They want the Republicans to acquiesce to their demands over what the people voted for in 2024. So, you know what, man? So I know this is going to be a protracted shutdown, and I feel sorry for the folks out there. I can only pray for them that they have some kind of nest egg or some people they can lean on. Remember now, this is federal employees. It permeates out into other businesses that have to close down when there's no people to support certain areas. But Wall Street is not necessarily as fully impacted as Main Street's going to be. And that reach is only going to be so far, because the government employees are not everybody. They're not everybody. Anyway, Katelia, thanks for showing up. I'm telling you, it is crazy out there, and the way people look at this thing. I'm not a perfect politician. All I know is some things that just make sense. We can't even afford American citizens. How the hell can we afford 15, 20 million illegal aliens? We can't afford it. Even if we had this bleeding ass hearts, we can't take everybody's poor. That shit about what's on the goddamn Statue of Liberty, that was hundreds of years ago. That's not true anymore. You can't just stumble in here and think everything is the way it was in 16 something. Anyway, I had enough. Oh man, you know what? We're in dire straits as America. And let me also say this before I leave. Trump, first of all, he's not a perfect man. And he's making some mistakes too. He could blow all of this stuff. He could really blow it all if he does something, and if he does, not just says something, but does something stupid with his legislation. So he's got to understand he's on the clock. Anyway, with that, thanks for stopping by. I could tell you, anybody else out there, just hit the like button. And until next time, we'll be back again with some political reactions. Our pain, marriage, politics, and sports. Over and out.